Hey, it's April 1st, so that means it's time for a wrap up. Also, before we get started, we're not going to talk about my hair. It is hair wash day. It's been snowing most of the day, so it's been in a hat, and I'm going to go for a run after this video, so it's going to get washed. So in the month of March, I read 15 books. I DNF'd 3. One of them was Fathom Folk by Eliza Chan. This is really unfortunate because this book is so pretty. I especially love the naked hardback. I think this is Illumicrate. This is an Illumicrate book. Look at that. Look at that giant squid. It's so pretty. Unfortunately, I just really didn't vibe with the writing of this one. I liked the story, the plotline, but the writing was just not it. It wasn't it. I didn't like it. And it was taking me, look at how big this font is. It's massive. And it was taking me forever to get through a chapter. So I think I'm gonna DNF it. I'm gonna pass this one on and move on with my life, unfortunately. The other two that I DNF'd were some arcs. I talked about them in my TBR video, and for one of them it wasn't because the book was bad, it was just not the right time for me. I don't know enough about the subject matter to be able to engage with the book, and also I just don't have time for arcs right now. I have too many physical books that I own that I need to catch up on, and I just don't have time to give to NetGalley, so I am giving up on arcs for the time being. Maybe next year I'll revisit it. But the other arc, so first, the arc that I DNF'd that I didn't really have a problem with the book was No Sense in Wishing by Lawrence Burney. And it was about music throughout the global Black diaspora, and I think I could return to this later on, but it just was not meshing with my brain right now. So I figured instead of using my time to read this book and maybe give it 3 stars because I just wasn't getting it, I was just gonna DNF it and move on and come back later once it's actually published. I have seen people on Instagram talking about it though, and I'm glad that it's getting a little bit of attention, because when I got the arc, I was like, I've never heard of this guy. None of my friends are talking about this guy, so I don't know how popular this book is, but I've seen it on Instagram, so that's good. And then the other one was, I don't even remember the title. It was a Golden Girls mystery, and it just wasn't for me, unfortunately. Oh, I actually had a 4th DNF. I also DNF'd How About Our Bananas. It is a nonfiction book that I've had on my Kindle, and it was part of my 24 and 24. And the reason I DNF'd it was because I just wasn't getting anything out of it. And it's a nonfiction, so normally I'm reading nonfiction to get something out of the book, to learn something. But I have a degree in meteorology and climatology, and I also have a degree in environmental sociology. And this book just was not adding to what I already know from getting those degrees. And it was taking me forever to get through it. I just kept dragging my feet, so I decided it's done. I still have it on ebook, so if I ever want to come back to it, I can. But for the time being, I don't need to read it. But digging back in to the books that I did finish, the first one was Solitaire by Alice Oseman. This was a carryover from February. It was the buddy read that my mom and I picked for February. And I ended up liking this okay. I gave it 3.75 stars. I definitely prefer the Heartstopper books to this one. I like learning about Tori. Tori is one of the most interesting characters to me in Heartstopper, and that's who this book is following. But I don't know. I remember the ending feeling kind of abrupt. I know my mom really liked the ending, but to me it didn't seem realistic, and it didn't seem to fit with the rest of the book. So, yeah. Now that I'm thinking back on it, I do remember this feeling kind of like a fever dream. So in that sense, I think Alice Oseman did a good job with her writing, with their writing, because Tori is in a place mentally that is very dark. And I remember feeling this way when I was in high school, and I think that's part of why I didn't like the book, because I didn't want to be reminded of how I felt in high school. But yeah, fortunately, I think I'm going to get rid of this one. It is not a 4 or 5 star, and I don't feel like I'm going to return to it. Whereas with like the Heartstopper graphic novels, I will return to those over and over again. So yeah, this one's gonna go. The next book that I finished in March was The London Seance Society. This one was about a girl who was learning how to do seances because her sister had learned how to do seances from this teacher. They had the same teacher, and her sister ends up being murdered. So she wants to learn how to do seances so that she can call her sister back from the dead and figure out what happened. And this one ended up having a romance that I didn't really care for. It came out of nowhere. She's in Paris and they end up going back to England, I think it was London, to like infiltrate this men's seance society and try and figure out what's going on, because it becomes apparent that there are also, I don't know what you call them, people who do seances who are not keeping the standard of service that people who actually conduct seances want. So they are like teaching classes on how to fake it, essentially, and it's not a reputable group anymore. But yeah, there was a romance that I feel like didn't need to be in here. Also read The Lost Apothecary by this author, and with that one, I didn't necessarily think there was anything wrong with that one. I just wish it had given me more. So like these are like marketed for adult, but they feel like a young adult trying to be an adult, essentially. So I think if this was written for a younger audience and didn't include some of the romantic aspects, it would have been a much better book, in my opinion. But I ended up giving this one 3 stars. Now that I'm thinking back on it, I would honestly even drop it down to like 2.5. But this one's also going. I'm not keeping it. The next one that I finished was a manga volume by Tatsuya Endo. I forgot to say, my goal for this TBR was just to read only from women authors, and I do not think that Tatsuya is a woman, but I waited so long to get this book from the library that I wasn't going to skip it. So I just squeezed it in the first week and read from women the rest of the month. But this manga is called Blade of the Moon Princess, and I only read volume 1. I will be continuing the series. Not too much that I can tell you about this, since I only read the first volume. Manga are quite a bit shorter than regular books, or even like graphic novels. Graphic novels can be much longer than manga are. If you didn't know, Tatsuya Endo is the person who created Spy Family, that manga, and I am caught up on that. There are no more volumes out in the US right now. So I saw this and I decided to read it. I ended up giving it 5 stars. It seems like there's a queen, maybe not a queen, an empress. Yeah, they're an empire. So the empress is dying, essentially, and there are people who are trying to stage a coup and kill the daughter of the empress and all this other stuff. And so the empress ends up sending her daughter to a different moon, and to the tainted world, not a moon. They're on the moon and they're sending her to the tainted world so that she can potentially survive all these people who are trying to kill her. It's essentially what happens in the first volume. So I can't give you much more of a synopsis, but I did enjoy it. I liked the art, which I already knew I liked the art from Spy Family, and I don't currently have the next one on hold, but I will be putting it on hold after I'm done filming this video. The next one that I finished in March is actually one that I also hauled. and that is Every Summer After by Carly Fortune. This was the book club book for my library's book club this month, and Carly Fortune is actually the librarian who runs its favorite romance author, and I don't know that I would say she's my favorite, especially when compared to like Emily Henry or Kennedy Ryan, but she's definitely up there. This book focuses on Persephone Fraser and Sam Florek, and they become friends when Percy, which is her nickname, ends up spending the summer in Barry's Bay. Yeah. She ends up spending the summer in Barry's Bay after she has a really rough school year. Her parents buy a lake house, so they're kind of rich. And that was a criticism of the book, was that this was like a rich, white, skinny girl. And I think that criticism is valid. However, I still really enjoyed the nostalgia and the way that the book was written. So I still gave it 5 stars. But anyways, they become friends one summer when her family starts taking her to Barry's Bay for the summer because of how awful school has been going for her. And long story short, it turns into a romance. They're in love with each other because of course they are. And I think the strongest part of this book for me was the nostalgia. So the author will alternate between a chapter set in the past, and we range from when they're 13 all the way to when they're, I think, 19, and then it'll go towards the future. And so the book starts out with Percy getting a phone call from Sam's brother. He calls her to tell her that their mom has died, the brother's mom. And their mom was essentially a second mom for her. So she, of course, goes back for the funeral. But we find out that this is the first time she's been back in a decade. Or almost a decade, something like that. And so the book is going back and forth between the past and present and telling us why she left, why they weren't together for a decade. And I don't know, it did something for me. I ate this up. And as soon as I got to the book club, I snatched a copy because I was not going to go without this book. I mentioned our book club, the librarian buys the books, and then we each get a chance to check them out before the next book club. And then when we come to that month's discussion, we have an opportunity to take the book home. However, there are only a certain number of books. Usually there's enough for everyone who wants one, but this one, there was only like 4 copies when I got there, so I snatched it. And I was not giving it up. Needless to say, that means I'm keeping this one since I took it from the library. See in the haul portion at the end of the video, but I actually ended up picking up another book by this author. And I think if she has this nostalgia in each of the books, I'm really gonna love her. She's like almost to Emily Henry level for me. The next one that I read is actually one that I was already halfway through and I just finished it in March. And that is Happy Place by Emily Henry. Similarly to Every Summer After, this book had a nostalgia element that I think Emily just did so well. There is a particular scene that I read last month where Wynn and, I can't remember, Harriet and Wynn are in a movie theater and they take a weed gummy, and the scene is them like getting high in the movie theater and then going out to like it's not a fair, it reminds me of a fair, it's like a carnival because there's some festival happening where they are. And that scene has lived in my head rent-free ever since I read it. I can't stop thinking about it. And I don't really know why. Like, there wasn't anything too special about it, but I was talking in my Discord with people who have also read this book, and they were like, yeah, that's the scene that did it for me too. And like, the rest of the book was good, but that scene is like the most memorable scene I have ever had in a book, and I don't know why. I guess I should probably tell you what the book is about. Harriet and Wynn are our main couple, and this is a second chance romance. They had been together since they were in college, and every summer they and their friend group go to this beach house in Maine and spend a week there. And this the cottage is actually how they ended up meeting and getting together because Harriet was originally friends with these two people. They were her roommates. They started the trips, and then as their roommate pool grew, they invited more people to come. And so now we are up to a group of like 6 core people who have all ended up being couples. And Harriet and Wynne are one of them. Without giving too many spoilers, the week that they are showing in this book ends up being the last week that they're going to get to spend at this house, and nobody but the girl whose parents own the house knows that going into it. Something else that nobody knows is that Harriet and Wynne have been broken up for quite a while. It says they broke up 5 months ago and they still haven't told their best friends. So they get to the cottage, and I think they had decided that like Wynne was going to make some excuse about why he couldn't show up, but then he was trying to tell the people, the girl and her partner who owned the house, that he wasn't going to be able to make it, and they talked him into coming because they are actually getting married when they're at this beach house because it's the last week that they have there. So Wynne gets talked into it, and this is a story of like reconciliation and how all of these friends have their issues with each other and how they deal with them and how they've let them bottle up over like 15 years. Maybe not 15, maybe only 10, because they're not that old. But there's a lot of conversations of grief, a lot of conversations of friendship and like how to be a good friend, how to be a good partner, that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think this has ended up being my favorite Emily Henry. I have read Book Lovers, Beach Read, and Happy Place. And then I have 3 more. Well, 2 more. I have 2 more on my shelves, and I fully intend on buying the new one when it comes out in April. So, yeah. For now, this is my favorite. However, I bought this copy from Pingo, and like it looks okay on camera, but in person, it's definitely really beat up, and it doesn't match the rest of my Emily Henry books at all because it's so beat up. So I'm kind of thinking I'm gonna sell this one. Like I said, I bought it for a few bucks on Pingo, so it's not a huge loss, and I'm gonna try and find a nicer copy later on. Right, after a brief break, we are back. The next book I read, I borrowed from the library, and it was an audiobook. That was Are Prisons Obsolete by Angela Davis. I feel like I talked about this in a vlog, but maybe I didn't. I ended up giving this one 5 stars, and looking back on it now, I don't think I can really like do the book justice without looking at the synopsis. So we're gonna do that. Actually, this is a case for abolishing prisons in the United States, and Angela Davis goes through the history of prisons and how they came to be what they are today. Essentially justifies why prisons need to be abolished. She talks a lot about the racism and the sexism that we have in our prison system and how those have impacted the way that, people of color get arrested more often. They get arrested for smaller infractions than white people do. And then women's prisons specifically, she covers, sexual assault by guards and things like that. And I personally feel like she makes a good case to abolish prisons. I don't know what that would look like, honestly. I need to think about it some more, but I enjoyed this book. Enjoy is a weird word to use for this one. I learned a lot, I guess is a better way to put it, and I think you should read it too, especially if you are a white person or a man, especially if you're a white man, honestly. Yeah, I gave this one 5 stars. I'm glad I got it from the library. I would consider buying a copy if I saw it in a bookstore. So, yeah. The next one that I finished was another audiobook that I got from the library. It was Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. I am pretty sure I covered this one in a vlog. I'm pretty sure I covered it in a vlog. So I'm not going to talk too much about it. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. It was good. I liked it. It was intriguing. I will say, however, that after finishing it and reading some other stuff, it is not as memorable as I thought it was. I remember the end scene very well, but the rest of the book is, I'm really having to dig to get that synopsis out. So I think it would be fair to like lower this rating a little bit to like a 4-star instead. But otherwise, I enjoyed it. This book is about Laszlo Strange, who is an orphan who ends up being a librarian. And long story short, he works his way into an expedition to find the lost city of Weep. Essentially, the city had another name at one point. However, something happened and some kind of magic made it so that people slowly forgot the name. One day they just wake up and all they know the city by is Weep. They know that it had another name, but they can't remember it. There was a romance in this. Again, I don't necessarily think that the romance had to happen or that it had to be written the way that it was. I don't remember enjoying the scenes. They don't tell me her name in the synopsis, but she is in the city of Weep and she's like invading his dreams. But he ends up falling in love with her, which, surprise, it's the first girl he meets outside of the library. Of course he's gonna fall in love with her. That's not news. Yeah, I had checked out the second one from the library. I didn't get to it, and honestly at this point I don't know when I'll get to it. So the audiobook ended up returning. I don't really see a reason for me to check it out right now because I have so many other things that I want to read more. So maybe eventually I'll continue, but for now I'm not going to. So I don't think I'm going to add it to my series sheet in my journal. The next book that I read was unfortunately the worst book I've read all year, and that is Nocticadia by Carrie Lake. I borrowed this on KU and read it. It was supposed to be for a dark romance book club, but I fell so far behind that I didn't get to discuss it with the group. Overall, the rest of the group really liked it. However, I did not. I didn't like it at all. There was a point towards the beginning, like in the first 150 pages, where my brain said, this is Harry Potter fan fiction. And while I was a Harry Potter fan when they were coming out and I was a child, I am no longer a Harry Potter fan. And I think that a lot of the people I was reading it with are ex-Mormons, and the majority of them were not allowed to read or watch Harry Potter growing up, so I don't think that this book would have that connotation for them. But for me, it put a bad taste in my mouth when I realized this probably started out as Harry Potter fan fiction. Another issue that I had with it was the male main character. There was never any mention of him being bipolar or having like a mood disorder or anything like that, but he would switch between being like extremely formal, even when they were like making out and stuff, to being a completely different person. I don't know how to describe him, but like he was no longer formal. And then he would just keep switching back and forth, and I was like, we gotta pick a personality, my man. And I don't think this book needed to be that long either. It was almost 700 pages. Yeah, it was 682, and I just kept reading, and by the time I decided that I wasn't having a good time and wanted to DNF, I was like 10% from the end. So I decided just to finish it, give it a fair shot, because this was my first dark romance, like officially dark romance. And unfortunately for the group, the second book that we picked, everyone hated. So nobody actually finished it. that I know of. And the group has been silent ever since, so I'm a little worried that it's disbanded, but I don't know. I don't know what's going on with that. The next book that I finished was Unwell Women by Eleanor Cleghorn. I don't know how you say that. This was a nonfiction, and it details the history of women's health throughout the ages. I definitely think that the first section, so part 1, was the most surprising to me, which makes sense because it is ancient Greece to the 19th century. So I took a lot of AP history classes, and I learned quite a bit about health in those, like how, like the 4 humors and stuff like that, but I did not learn things specifically about women. And this first section was wild. I primarily listened to this, and the entire time I was listening to this first section, I just kept going, what? I'm sorry, what did you just say? I don't remember if it was this one or if it was the late 19th century one, but they talked about like the witch trials at some point. I'm gonna say it was probably part 1 that they talked about it, because that was primarily in like the 1600s. But essentially, if a woman had a miscarriage, that was considered witchcraft. Or if like the baby was born not alive, that could be considered witchcraft. And the mother, as well as any midwives or doctors who assisted in the birth, could be tried for witchcraft. And another thing that really surprised me was that men thought that once women became of age, like of child-rearing age, so once they got their period, that if their womb was empty, they would go insane. And like they were obsessed with sex and stuff like this. And it's like wild. It is so wild to me that the female body has been this much of a mystery for so long, and we haven't improved. Like, what do you mean? Anyways, I gave this one 5 stars as well. I highly recommend listening to it. It made it easier to get through, especially the parts that were tough topics to listen to. Like, they talk about the suffrage movement, birth control, and then in part 3, so 1945 to the present, they also talk about autoimmune diseases and how women just aren't listened to when they report symptoms to their doctors a lot of the time. And they also talked about mother's little helpers, so like sleeping pills, which were a common thing in the 1950s and 60s, and probably even later than that too. But yeah, this book was very good. I do think that it could have focused a little more on intersectionality. I do think a lot of books about feminism tend to leave out women of color, or just people of color in general, honestly. So I think that that is the only thing I would say needs improvement. Otherwise, I learned a lot. The audiobook was good, and I am planning to keep this one on my shelf for people to reference in the future. The next book that I read is another one that I went out and bought after I finished it, and that is The Favorites by Lainey Fargo. I am obsessed with this book. I'm obsessed with it. So this book, I think I might have talked about it. I had it out from the library, and I know I recorded a clip. I don't know if it made it into a book or not, into a video or not, but I recorded a clip about this one. This is about an Olympic skating couple. I think they do ice dance. And for those of you who don't know, I am obsessed with ice skating and gymnastics, particularly in the Olympics. And this reminded me of the way that the movie I, Tonya made me feel a few years ago. I love the drama. I know the sport's not exactly fair, and I acknowledge that, but the drama it creates, I eat it up. I eat it up. I'm not a big reality TV person, but when it comes to stuff like this, I eat it up. I gave this one 5 stars, and then immediately went to the library and got another one of Lainey Fargo's books. I think it was They Never Learn. is the one that I got. I haven't started it yet, but I plan to read it sometime soon. I won't talk too much about this just because I am pretty sure I put it in a vlog, but it follows this couple and their ups and downs and like their journey to the Olympics and the relationships that they build along the way. And the ending, I will say, was a little odd. It was not what I expected, but it was good. So yeah, I think if you liked the movie I, Tonya, you like figure skating, or honestly just the Olympics in general, especially the drama-filled sports, I would recommend reading this book. We're almost done. Well, not actually. We have 5 more. I don't think I've talked about most of them in vlogs though, so I'll try to make this quick, but also helpful. So the next one I read was Magnolia Parks. I started this back in January, and then I ran out of Spotify hours because I used them for something else. And so I finally had more hours to listen to it this month, and finished it almost 2 weeks ago at this point. I ended up giving this one 3 stars. I enjoyed it, but I didn't love it. I liked it enough to keep going in the series because other people I know who have read it and read more in the series said that they also didn't like the first one, but they kept going and it got a lot better. So I'm excited to see how the next one goes. But essentially it's about Magnolia Parks and I don't remember his name, some dude that she's in love with and he's in love with her, but they're toxic. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. It's a toxic relationship. I would compare this to Normal People by Sally Rooney. I know Kayla from Books and Lala really liked it, and then Sydney from Sid Bookworm did not like it. So maybe watch their vlogs about it to decide if you want to read it or not, because I'm pretty sure I didn't vlog this one. I, like everybody else in the world, read Sunrise on the Reaping. It was okay. I liked it. However, none of it was surprising to me. I think if I hadn't read The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes a few years ago, which by the way I hated, I think I gave it 3 stars or 2.5 because I appreciated what Suzanne Collins did with it and I thought the writing was still good, but I hated being inside President Snow's head. It was awful. But because I had read that, I knew what to expect from him in Sunrise on the Reaping. I mean, I already knew what to expect from him from the original trilogy too, but none of what came about in Sunrise on the Reaping was a surprise to me. I knew to expect the worst. And I think going into it that way made it less, I don't know what the word is. It made it so I was less obsessed with it and I was less affected when the big things that made people really upset happened, essentially. I think it was worth the time to read it, especially if you like Haymitch and want to know more about him. But if you're not a huge Hunger Games fan and you only read the original trilogy and you think you're good, I think you're also good. The next one that I finished, I have 2 copies of it because I messed up and 2 of my subscription boxes got the same book, and that is After the Forest by Kel Woods. I unfortunately will be getting rid of both of these because I did not like it enough. My partner gave it 5 stars, but he doesn't want me to keep a copy for him, so we're getting rid of both of them. This is a retelling of Hansel and Gretel, but it also seems to have bits and pieces of like Rumpelstiltskin and Snow White and maybe another fairy tale in there. It was okay. I thought the twist on it was fun, but again, I wasn't really surprised by anything, so it was hard for me to stay engaged in this book. I have another one actually in my haul, you'll see it, from this author, and I think it's a Little Mermaid retelling. We'll see how that one goes. If this one is also a 3.5 or lower, I'm probably not going to be buying the rest of the author's books. But I won't say no to them. If I happen to get them from the library, I won't be upset. We're almost done. 2 left. I finished 2 books yesterday. The first one was We Came to Welcome You by Vincent Tirado. I took my copy back to the library this morning, so I don't have it. I also gave this one 3.5 stars. I really, really wanted to like it. The premise sounds like something I'd like, and it's from a trans Black author, which is also something that I like. And the main characters are a biracial lesbian couple, which is also something that I enjoy. However, I don't feel like the horror part of this delivered. After I finished it, like the ending, I guess I should tell you what it's about. So this couple moves in to a new to them house in this gated community. The main character is Sol. She's Black and her family is from the Dominican Republic. And then her wife is Alice, who is Vietnamese. And Sol is recovering because she has recently been accused of plagiarism by a terrible coworker at her job. She's a professor at Yale, a professor and researcher. And then her wife Alice keeps getting passed over for promotions. But they move to this house trying to turn over a new leaf, and weird things start happening. And the neighbors keep trying to force them to join the HOA. They don't want to because they don't want to have those rules, and I don't blame them after seeing the rules that the HOA had. But there is something weird going on. And I really think that the author could have leaned into the something weird a lot more and developed the ending a lot more. Like, I would have read another 100 pages if it meant I got a more developed ending. But the ending was abrupt. Like, everything that had been building just immediately ended. There was very little resolution. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't really understand what happened in the ending. And I don't want to spoil it, so I won't say it here, but like, I listened to the last hour or so that I could get it done while I was doing other stuff, and I don't get it. I don't think I missed anything. But this was also a common theme throughout the entire book. So she finds these letters in her backyard and she starts reading them, and I don't know if this was just like poor editing and the editor didn't make the author go back and add things in that were forgotten, but they would give me a letter and then the next chapter would be referring to the letter and saying things that didn't make any sense to me. So I would go back and try to figure out what was happening, and there was no information in the letter that pertained to what was in the chapter. So that might be part of what was confusing. Maybe it needed more editing. I do think that this is a debut. This is not a debut, unfortunately. I would be willing to try the author's other books. However, if the next one I read also has these same issues, I don't think I will be reading from them anymore, unfortunately. Then the last one that I read was Royal Assassin by Robin Hobb. I can't tell you too much because this is the second book in a series and I don't want to spoil the first book at all. However, if you want spoilers, my friend Jenny has a spoiler-filled vlog of her rereading that, and I actually used it before I read this one to remind me of everything that I'd forgotten. I am keeping this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. I enjoyed this a lot more than Assassin's Apprentice. Assassin's Apprentice, I feel like maybe it was too short, and maybe Fitz, the main character, was too young in that book for me to really feel connected to him. One is following the events of book 1, and Fitz is a little bit older. I think he's like 16 to 18. And I loved this one so much. I can't wait to read the next one. But yeah, that is the last book I read. We will move into my haul. And I'm not going to tell you synopses of this because this video is already so long. April is my birthday month, and I went down to Salt Lake to get a tattoo as my birthday gift to myself, but because I was in Salt Lake, I I can never go down there and not go to the bookstore. So a few of these are from that bookstore. One of them is from the library that I got for free. 2 are special editions. One of them I shouldn't have gotten. I'm probably going to read the first chapter and decide if I'm getting rid of it or not now. And then I had a free book from Book of the Month because of their Book of the Year thing. I have since canceled Book of the Month because their birthday discount or whatever was not nearly as good as I remember it, and there were no books this month that I wanted. So with that, I will show you what I got. Before we start, my mom sent me this birthday card. I think it's so cute. It's a girl on the couch with her cat, and it says, do the stuff that makes you happiest today. And on the inside, it says, even if it's the same stuff you do every day. I just think it's so cute. From Lovebound Library, I bought this bookmark. It's little bunnies, and then a sticker that says read diverse books. And the book that I bought there was This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. This is on my Magical Readathon TBR, so hopefully I will get to it this month. The book I got from the library was this one. You've seen it already, Every Summer After, also by Carly Fortune. My Book of the Month books were The Wedding People by Allison Esbach. This was the Book of the Year pick. And then Liquid, a love story by Miriam Ramani. I don't really know what this one is about. I had to pick one of the monthly books to get the Book of the Year, and that's how I ended up with this. The cover on this one does not fit it very well. I'm going to talk about the March Owl Crate and the February Illuma Crate books, so skip ahead if you don't want to see those. The March Owl Crate was the Other Cal Woods book, and that is Upon a Starlit Tide. You can see there's a mermaid. The edges are pretty. It has like lions and a compass, and then it also has the bookmarks that I love. The naked hardcover is really pretty. It's just a foiled ship on both sides. And then that's the spine. And then the back of the dust jacket looks like that. Yeah, hopefully I like this one more than After the Woods and I keep it. But if I don't, I'll just stop buying her books. No big deal. This next one is a pre-order. It came in 2 weeks early, and I'm really upset with myself that I didn't read it when I got it. But I did start it today. I'm a couple chapters in, and it's already made me cry. I didn't expect Ashley Winstead to make me cry, but this is her 2025 release. This book will bury me. It's about true crime. The Illuma Crate book for February showed up. It was Capitania by Cassandra James. This book is not what I thought it was when I didn't cancel, and I am concerned because it is YA. I don't really tend to do well with YA books anymore, but I'll show you the edges and stuff. I do like the naked dust jacket. It's like a map, or the naked hardback. It's like a map. And then the dust jacket doesn't have anything on the inside. The last 2 books that I have are from a different bookstore in Salt Lake City. I bought these 2 from the King's English. You've already seen one of them, and that's The Favorites. And then the other one I bought was Breasts and Eggs by Mieko Kawakami. The bookseller told me he had heard really good things about this. So I'm hoping it's good. I think I'm going to try and prioritize it in, I think, May. Whatever month is AAPI Heritage Month, I have quite a few books that I want to focus on then. We have one that I got on Libro FM too. Let me figure out what it was. The audiobook that I hauled was How to Tell When We Will Die on Pain, Disability, and Doom by Johanna Hedva. The Trans Rights Readathon was at the end of March, and I did try to read for it, but I didn't get to much just because I hadn't planned for it, and I already had so many books that I was in the middle of trying to finish before Magical Readathon. So the We Will Welcome You was by a trans author, and then this one was going to be another one that I read. I don't remember much about it, but I used a Libro.fm credit on it, so I have it, and I'll listen to it later in the year, probably. But yeah, those are the books. We can give you some stats really quick. I acquired 10 books, and I unhauled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I unhauled 6, so I have a net gain of 4. Some of these books that I'm unhauling were not on my spreadsheet, so my numbers don't quite add up. I thought I had everything on my spreadsheet, but I've been finding lately that I have not added quite a few things. So these numbers probably aren't going to mean much for a while, but I went from having 247 read books to 253 read books out of 737 for a total read percentage of 34.33%. That is almost a half percentage up from last month's. Last month's was 33.998. So we're doing good. This is more books than I want in a month, but I've done my birthday book shopping, so I probably won't get too many in April. And my entire TBR is owned. So like my entire TBR for April are owned books, and quite a few of them are ones that are either on my 25 and 25 or ones that I've bought in the last few months. So we're still making good progress. I just need to reel in my buying a little bit. But yeah, we can flip around and I'll fill out my book journal really quick. All right. I have already talked kind of a lot in this video, so in the interest of keeping this segment kind of short, and because I've already introduced all of these pages, this is just gonna be like a speed run, no voiceover. So if you have questions about what I'm doing in the journal or like what I thought of certain things, just leave them in the comments. And yeah, this is probably the last time you're going to hear from me, so if you don't have anything to say in the comments, leave me a book stack emoji because this was a lot of books. And thank you for watching. I hope you're having a good day wherever you are. Bye! Okay, I do want to talk about this page just for a minute. I'm halfway done with this. I've got all the t-shirts sewn together. I just need to do a backing and then figure out how to do the quilting part. And then the jelly roll rug is completely done. I haven't completed anything else. I have worked on the cross stitch and I am jogging again. I had a good podiatrist appointment and I started running last week. I've taken a break since I got my tattoo just because I didn't want to irritate it, but I am taking the covering off of it today. So I'm doing another jog today and we are well on our way to doing a 5K. I jogged a mile without stopping for the first time since I was a freshman in high school. So that is incredible. And also, we've paid off one of the student loans, and next paycheck, I can make another payment on a new one. And I also just found out that my forbearance period got pushed to August. Don't know why, didn't tell me anything, but that makes it easier for me so I can pay that one off without interest. And then just a general debt update. Our credit card amounts have stayed about the same, but our overall debt, we have paid off $1,000 in the last month. So that is incredible. I think we can actually mark off saving 1K because we do have $1,000 in savings right now. This Few Sodas one was a little dicey for a bit, but we're doing better. And then everything else we're just working on. Alright, so we added 3 series to this page. One of them I was in the middle of, but it didn't make it onto this page for some reason. And then I have finished one. So I have finished 2 series for the year. That's exciting. I just need to finish a few more. Yeah, that is it.